And the idea was always towards the platform that, we have some sort of platform, but talks were a way to facilitate that. And now, we have TEG community of around 5,000 plus alumni, out of which I think 1,500 plus are on WhatsApp group, plus additional 500 plus are on the Telegram group, which is only for ITB alumni. The TEG per se as an initiative, we kept it open for non-alumni as well. So a lot of non-ITB alumni also take the benefit of it, and happy to involve and explore synergies with ITB alumni and otherwise. And so is from the speakers, and we have kept it open for non-ITB speakers as well. And the idea, as I mentioned, is supporting budding entrepreneurs, people who would like to move towards entrepreneurship, or support anyone at any age. I'm not saying age per se as young in terms of age, but at any age, anyone who would like to move towards entrepreneurship and looking for certain support is the platform all about. Now, as far as the entrepreneurship GAN per se, GAN is considered, so it has been always kind of a very thoughtful perspective to whom to bring as a speaker, because who is kind of the person who should be giving the GAN. Of course, there are a lot of people in the entrepreneurship space who can come and talk about this and that happening in startup world. But then, we have always been very selective about who kind of is the suitable person to give GAN. And I'm 100% sure that we have one such individual with us. And I'm saying it because when I talk to people, they say that, oh, in the past, Bharat has been speaker and Kamal has been speaker. I mean, if I join, what would I add to? But then it's not about, it's not about what you would add to per se as a topic, but your journey, individualistic journey is also very important. And so it doesn't matter if people from the same age group or same batch or same kind of area have spoken in the past. Every new talk, as Rajan and Hishi, they both have been with me in these talks for the last at least 20 talks. So each talk brings a very different perspective, brings new learnings for the people who are joining. And even in that particular topic or in that particular space, it's a very interesting take that we get from the speaker. So not taking more time, I'll just formally mention that Rajan is with us is one of our mentors, TEG mentors. He has been supporting TEG for a long time, and together we are planning for in-person event as well in November in India. And also with us is Rishikesh Satwani Hirshi. He is a very active ITB alumni as well, and he's also one of the TG mentors and helping us. Uh, and I'll ask Rajan to formally and informally introduce Prem, because both of them are 75 batch ITB alumni, and then we'll move ahead from there. To you, Rajan.
Okay, thank you, yeah, Professor Vaibhav. As Professor Vaibhav said, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening in your respective time zones. And welcome to another session of the Entrepreneurship Gyan. Before I introduce today's featured speaker, let me set the stage with a small confession. Prem and I go back over 50 years to the hallowed corridors, or more accurately, the not so hallowed hostel blocks of IIT Bombay, class of 1975, or as we prefer to call ourselves, the class of 75, the GOAT batch. I know we, I know each and every one of the batch claims that title, but in our case, we definitely do have the receipts. Now, Prem lived in Hostel 5, and I was next door in Hostel 4. For those of you who don't know what that means, these were adjacent buildings separated by little more than a few feet of grassy land and a lot of mutual suspicion. And during exam weeks, when the stress of thermodynamics and circuit theory reached a boiling point, we had our own uniquely IIT way of coping. Forget meditation, forget deep breathing. We would lean out of our hostel windows and engage in full throated shouting matches, Hostel 4 versus Hostel 5, trading creative insults across the courtyard at maximum volume. It was deeply cathartic, completely pointless, and looking back, probably our first real exercise in voice communication technology. Little did I know that the fellow rolling back at me from the Hostel 5 would go on to spend the next 4 decades building an entire career around voice communications and making machines talk to humans more intelligently than we ever talk to each other. I know colloquially we used to call them Bali competitions, but I know, and many of you would know about this. But let me tell you about the remarkable journey that followed those hostile shouting matches. After graduating from IIT Bombay, Prem earned his PhD in electrical engineering and computer science from the University of Texas at Austin, and then joined none other than Bell Labs, the birthplace of the transistor and modern telecommunications. From there, his career reads like a masterclass in how to spot technological inflection points and build companies around them. His very first startup, Fluent, was streaming full motion video over local area networks back in the early days, years before YouTube was even a twinkle in anyone's eye. At Novell, he led the development of SAPI, the original TSAPI, that is, the original open computer telephony integration platform that became a foundational technology for the contact center industry. Then came the chapter that truly defined his entrepreneurial legacy. In 1998, Prem founded Telera, which disrupted the IVR industry by building a next generation voice platform on open standards. Telera was acquired by Alcatel in 2002, and its technology under Genesis went on to become a market leader globally. Not one to rest, Prem co-founded Transera in 2004, pioneering what we now know as contact center as a service. Transera was acquired by Broadsoft in 2016, and when Cisco acquired Broadsoft the very next year, it was Prem's creation that gave Cisco its official entry into the cloud contact center market. So the next time you call a customer service line and the experience doesn't make you want to throw your phone out the window, you might have Prem to thank for that. Today, Prem continues to shape the future of AI-driven enterprises as a board member and advisor to several innovative companies, including Minerva CQ, DVSum, API Viz, and Exato. He's also actively involved with IIT startups and remains a deeply engaged mentor to the next generation of entrepreneurs. And when he's not in a boardroom, you might find him at Everest Base Camp or the summit of Mount Fuji, or, and I'm not making this up, moonwalking on glaciers in Iceland. Clearly, the man still has energy left over from all those shouting matches. Tonight, Prem has chosen the fireside chat format to share his insights on a topic that sits at the cutting edge of where technology is heading, from conversational to agentic AI. Having spent his entire career at the frontier of voice, cloud, and AI, from the earliest IVR systems to today's autonomous AI agents, there is truly no one better positioned to guide us through this transition. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm TEG welcome to my batchmate, my former hostel scouting adversary, and a truly prolific entrepreneur, Dr. Prem Upaluru. From that, I hand it over back to you, Vaibhav.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Rajan. Uh, uh, Prem, so before starting with the Q&A, maybe you would like to share some points and then we start.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to address IIT alumni. I am. I don't know if I would be able to impart any gyan. However, it's always a pleasure to talk to people from IIT, for which we all hold a candle in our hearts. And so I'm very pleased to be here. And Rajan, thanks so much for that warm introduction. And I look forward to having a very productive conversation today.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, Prem. So, of course, you have seen the evolution from IVR system to cloud contact centers, and of course now AI agents and agentic AI. So the first question would be, what were the key inflection points that shaped this journey, or that you would like to share with the audience here?
Yeah. Yeah, that probably is a good start. When I joined Bell Labs, uh, it was very much a voice-centric telecommunications company. However, the idea of computers having a significant impact on communications was well recognized by that time, and that the two fields will collide and merge and disrupt many things in the future, and that was obvious at the time. And so I have actually been fortunate to be at that intersection of telecommunications and computer and software. And as you mentioned, Vaibhav, while I was at Novell, there was a standard called TSAPI, which was one of the very first ways of formalizing that marriage between communications and computers, which frankly allowed a lot of development later on in terms of applications as opposed to simply communications. So the whole idea of communication applications started with that integration between computers and communications. Voice is a very interesting phenomena in the sense that it is the most natural way in which human beings communicate. We don't even think about it. Like this conversation that we are having right now, we are not thinking through what is my next word. It comes naturally. The thoughts form in your head and you are able to communicate. So I have always felt that voice is a very natural way in which to express not only the emotions, but anything that one human being wants to express to another human being. Voice is a natural interface. But unfortunately, in the world of computers, voice was very difficult to manage in the beginning. 30, 40 years ago, it was not easy. There was not enough compute cycles, not enough understanding about voice to, uh, to allow applications to interact directly with human beings. So we invented a whole bunch of user interfaces in order for the human being to interact with applications and get what they want out of them. It started with text, which was the original way in which humans interacted with computers. Then, now, if I were to kind of fast forward, almost every application that you deal with on your iPhone, you can interact with it with voice. So that's a huge change. And that change was visible to some of us who came from Bell Labs or earlier technology firms that were trying to merge the world of communications and computing. And that led me to the world of voice and IVR, which ended up being my first startup. So the origins were in the labs where I worked with voice as well as telephony, as it used to be called, and computers. And that naturally led to my attraction towards making voice into a conversational interface for human beings to interact with applications.
That's excellent. So you talked about some of you at IBM and other places gotten this early insight. So for a lot of founders out here, how can they identify and act on such a major technology transition early on? Whatever it is, voice, cloud, AI, how do you separate noise from that signal?
Yeah. Um, so in my career and in the last 40 plus years, there have been several technology transformations that we have witnessed. And in the world of computing, if you see the from the mainframe to minis to PCs to the internet and mobile, these have all happened in the last 40 plus years. There is no magic way in which one can sort of say which technology is going to succeed and which technologies are just flashes in the pan. But generally speaking, things that fundamentally change the way humans interact with each other and interact with software applications that allow them to do things that they could not otherwise do, those are the technologies that matter. It all comes back to human centricity, right? The technologies that allow human beings to be more productive, human beings to be able to connect with other human beings. So I've always looked at it as see, does the technology have an impact on our own way of living, our own way of entertaining ourselves, our own way of conducting business? So those are the technologies that, generally speaking, tend to survive and have lasting impact.
Great. Uh, Thanks a lot. I think that's a interesting take on that. But then also there are a lot of buzzword, for example, around agentic AI or agents, and almost everyone would start talking about either Gen AI, which was like till last year. Now they are more talking about agentic AI or agents and stuff like that. So how do you define it in practical, real world terms? Of course, academically, I'm also used to defining it a lot more in academic perspective, but more
Yeah,
from a practice perspective or a practical perspective. How would you define it? Yeah.
yeah. So agentic AI, of course, is now the buzzword, and pretty much any new startup that I have seen recently is building some kind of an agentic AI solution. So what's the difference between AI that came before and the agentic AI? As most of us know, it's not just about 4 years ago when ChatGPT got introduced to the world and kind of made a big buzz and big impact. And one of the things that the large language models really brought to our attention and use is their ability to understand us in the way we normally speak to other human beings. So that was ChatGPT 2.0, I think, breezed through what used to be called the Turing test, right? Being able to talk to some entity and not knowing whether the other side entity is a human being or is it a computer. And ChatGPT pretty much breezed through that by, I believe, like a 2.0 version of that, right? Or maybe 3. So what we crossed the boundary over there is the ability of AI to understand, not only translate what is being said. When I'm speaking, my voice is producing sound waves. Those sound waves have to be received by another entity, translate the sound waves into meaningful phonemes. Then from the phonemes, they have to be translated into words, from the words to sentences, and ultimately represented as text, which can be manipulated by computers. And that that text then has to be understood, not just translated, but understood, right? What is the intent? What is the meaning? What are the semantics of what is being said? And then being able to use all that information to provide information back. That was the main thing that the ChatGPT conversational chatbots accomplished. Understanding a human being in their own natural way of saying what they want to say, extracting the meaning out of that, and then responding intelligently to the human being for whatever it is that they are expressing as their intent at that time. The main difference between a chatbot like that and the agentic world that we are entering is the ability of that AI to execute actions on behalf of the human. That's the main difference at a very high level. Chatbot can be viewed as responding to your questions. It is like a tutor, right? It is not like an assistant. Really, as an assistant, like most of us are familiar with a potentially like an administrative assistant that perhaps as executives we have had, and that assistant has knew us. They knew who you are, your preferences, and your way of doing things, and executed tasks on your behalf that were administrative so that you could focus on your main business of conducting sales, marketing, product development, whatever is the job that one had. An assistant allowed you to get those tasks, administrative tasks, taken care of by an assistant. So that's a good analogy of sort of transitioning from someone who is answering questions that you have to performing tasks on your behalf. So I would say that is the primary difference between agentic AI created AI applications versus chatbot. But I would also say that looking a little bit deeper into what constitutes an agentic AI, I would say there are four things that are important. Number one is the user interface channel to the agent. So that we get from chatbot-like thing, so that some kind of way in which we communicate is no longer like a point and click application that we are all used to on phones. Instead, you converse with it. So that's number one. So you inherit the chatbot capabilities and then add more functionality. So that number one, any agentic AI has to be able to understand a human being in the way the human being naturally communicates, whether that is through text or through voice, doesn't matter. Number two is at the back end of the agent, the agent is able to access one or more generative AI models in order to do the in order to do exploration of information, planning of tasks from breaking a complex task into simpler tasks, sequencing them, and making decisions from step to step. Being able to do that planning and exploration is what the agent relies on the LLM or the model for. So that's the second part. The third part is access to the real world tools to manipulate the real world, not just access information from the real world, but actually perform actions on the real world that change things in the real world. That may be as simple as sending an email or an SMS notification, but as complex as we are now beginning to see, conducting a drone war, right? I mean, it's a plethora of activities that are available to the agent to perform in the real world. That's the third thing. The fourth thing is chatbots tend to be session oriented, and once the session is over, there is no persistent state. Whereas agents have persistent state that they maintain between sessions, and they're also long running. They're not just session oriented, they're long running. They're there 24 by 7, perhaps doing tasks on your behalf, but they also have persistent memory that allows them to be more intelligent than a conversational bot is They know about you, they know about the environment, they know about the world. They're monitoring all of that by acting 24/7. These are the four primary things that I see distinguish agentic AI.
Excellent. So, given these very distinctive features that the AI agents are bringing to the table, where do we find meaningful adoption of these agents in the enterprise today?
Yeah. So I would broadly categorize the applications into either consumer facing or enterprise facing or business facing, right? So B2B versus B2C. That is the generic way in which most technology gets used. So let's talk briefly about B2C and we'll go to B2B. Interestingly, in the last 20 years, in the past, starting from mainframe computing, new technology used to find home first in business, and then once it has proven itself in the business, it would scale, become cost effective enough to be available to the consumer, right? For a long time, that was the paradigm. This paradigm shifted with the PC to some degree, but mostly with the internet. Internet fundamentally changed the technology paradigm where most technology now first comes to the consumer and then the businesses scramble to take advantage of this technology because otherwise they would be left behind the expectations of the consumers, right? So AI totally became a consumer-driven thing with the chatbot, right? I mean, I just heard the number. OpenAI probably has like 900 million users now, right? That's a kind of thing that Facebook got to after many years of being in existence. So on the consumer side, the agentic AI will be um, some sort of an agent, assistant, or a co-pilot or a coach that helps the individual perform their tasks. And we can briefly talk about a new phenomena that came in called OpenClaw, which is an agentic AI building framework, very cleverly done by a single individual. And by the way, that we should talk about that as well, that this new AI allows a single individual to create something of value for millions and perhaps even billions of people, which is a great opportunity that never existed before. I mean, you needed teams and you needed investment, you needed capital before you could bring some value to the people out there. But shifting from this kind of a consumer-oriented technology to business-oriented technology, in the B2B world, almost all agentic AI today is some form of an assistant that extends, enhances, automates the work of a human being. Some human beings somewhere in the cogs of the world of the business, right? That could be a salesperson. There are a host of startups focused on making a salesperson more effective, whether that is through having an assistant that listens to all the conversations that the salesperson is having with their customers and automatically extracting customer requirements from that conversation or action items from that conversation that the salesperson has to follow up, extracting user requirements and populating internal databases that other people can work on, like a technical salesperson to create a proposal. Many such activities are being done by agentic AI, often being developed and marketed by new startups. So finding a user and building an agentic AI that makes a user more productive in their own work is the first wave of agentic AI in the world of business. Be that sales, be that a product manager, be that a engineer, be that a finance person, or a lawyer or an accountant, doesn't matter. You have to choose a user, make that user more productive with an agentic AI.
Great. And of course, you have built several startups, and a lot of our participants here are building now or planning to build one in the near future. So if you were building a startup today, considering what you have just mentioned about agents and agentic AI, so how would you design products differently in an AI agent first word or AI enabled first word, basically?
Yeah. So I will comment on it in two ways. One is there are certain things that never change in terms of startup world. These are what I view them as first principles for startups. And then there are things that are very particular and specific and unique for the world of AI. So let me just make a comment on the first principles of being successful in startups. But I'll caution and say that no one really knows the sufficiency conditions for success. We all know the necessary conditions for success. I mean, those of us who have been to IIT, we know the difference between necessary conditions and sufficient conditions, right? So, as necessary conditions, any business has three pillars. The first pillar is the market. The second pillar is the product. And the third pillar is how do you take the product to the market, often called go to market. So these are the three pillars of any business, and these three pillars matter a lot to entrepreneurs and startup businesses. So on the market side, the two main things that a startup has to figure out is an urgent unmet market need. This is very important in terms of distinguish between unmet market need versus an urgent market need. Unmet market needs always exist, and most of the time in the world of business, existing incumbent vendors to those businesses are always thinking about unmet needs because they are constantly talking to the customer and they know what are as yet unmet needs of that customer. But every once in a while, what happens is in the world of business, which is continuously changing, the customer environment changes in some fashion. Like, for example, when web arrived, many retailers had to fundamentally change the way they sold their products, not just from a retail store, but from an online e-commerce site. That change was kind of forced on all retailers. That sort of external, exogenous change is what creates value opportunities for startups. And that's what creates that urgency, not just the unmet part. It, of course, is necessary, but the urgency has to be created for a startup to succeed. So I often advise the entrepreneurs that not only do you have to identify an unmet market need, but you have to identify urgency that raises the priority of what it is that need above other needs that enterprises have, because enterprises have limited budget and they have to have priorities to assign where they are going to invest their budget, right? So this to me is the number one. Number two is on the value proposition. The value proposition of a startup has to be differentiated and superior. Because in the world of business, any unmet need has a workaround or a working solution. Because you cannot have an unmet need and continue doing business. So most businesses figure out some kind of a workaround, some kind of a working solution to address that need. So whatever value proposition that one comes up with has to be at once superior to what they already have and differentiated against the competition that is also going to provide alternatives to that solution. So these are the two things that a startup entrepreneur has to think through. The urgency of the need, as well as the differentiated superiority of their own solution, their own value proposition. And the final thing is, once you figured out those two things, you have to figure out how to take your value proposition to the customers who have the need for which you have created the value proposition, which is the go-to-market. And the go-to-market has to have two factors: efficiency, because that creates profitability. For the efficiency means your cost of delivering the solution has to be less than the price you can charge for it, and the price that the customer is willing to pay for it has to deliver them the benefit in excess of the cost for the customer. So that's how the go-to-market works, and that is how the efficiency happens. And the other part is the scalability. It is not enough to go to one customer and be successful. You have to have an approach that once you're successful with one customer, you know how to get to 10. And once you have 10 customers, how to get to 100. That is the scalability factor. So these are what I have found as first principles that work across all startups, B2B particularly, and independent of whether your value proposition is AI or not. Now, shifting attention to specifically to AI startups, and I have already said that, but I would reiterate, the number one thing that we are seeing in the world of AI is identifying the user. Who will benefit from the value proposition of creating an AI, agentic AI? And so one has to analyze how business is being conducted. And more and more, what is important is who is the target user. In the world of AI, targeting the user is becoming the most important first criteria to figure out. Who are you going to, whose life, whose daily work life are you going to impact positively? And that goes back to the example I gave about, can I make a salesperson more productive? Meaning, if they have a $1 million quota, can they achieve a $1.5 million quota with the AI, right? And how do I get that extra $500,000 of benefit to the customer? Can I make that salesperson currently experiencing a 9-month sales cycle into a 6-month sales cycle? Does the AI allow them to do that? Because it is taking away some tasks, it is finding some insights that they are otherwise unable to get. Can we make them produce more accurate sales proposals, more proposals per month than they were being able to do? So the identifying the user and the use case are the most important things for creating agents, because it is those use cases in which the agentic AI is going to make the user more productive.
That's excellent. So we talked about various things that a founder needs to do to make sure that their startup is successful, and how AI is impacting the way they change those behaviors. So, however, AI startups can move really fast today. And how do we balance rapid experimentation with building a defensible long-term value is still something that founders get confused about. And with this fast pace, it's easy to miss that and continue doing experimentation and miss out on releasing the product or whatever. So what changes there? What are the key signals you track to identify when to stop experimenting?
Yeah. So what, because so much of the technology has become commodity now, even 1, 2, 3 people teams can produce software that used to take 30 people to produce, right? And they can produce that software application in 3 months, what used to take 3 years. So these are, huge changes in the market and in the world out there, which requires entrepreneurs to rethink the way that used to be versus the way it has to be. So the differentiation that I am beginning to see in the startups is domain knowledge. So deep knowledge about some domain is important now, in the sense that human judgment is one of the last arenas that is going to truly belong to humans for some more time, before perhaps AI is able to make better judgments than even experienced human beings. But let us set that aside. To make human judgments, a lot of times in business, where humans really play a role is in making some decisions in the presence of uncertainty. Today's AI is not that great about making wise decisions in the presence of uncertainty, right? It is very good at making decisions when the facts are clear, and it is able to execute a workflow uh, whose decisions are relatively clear cut, binary, and depends upon data it can access. But when it comes to judgment, it is still the domain of human beings. So blending those two is one of the areas of value proposition that entrepreneurs can create. Understanding the domain knowledge that human beings have, and which basically means to a large degree integrating data sources in the enterprise that provide that information to the human being or to the user, and at least surfacing all that information for the human being to make better judgments. So that's one area I would really encourage folks to look at, is how can an agent access tons of information but surface the information that allows human being to make better judgment. The second thing is, for at least next few years, human in the loop is going to be important for many sectors of the economy. For example, in the financial sector and healthcare sector, it is unlikely that AI agents will be either permitted to or capable of making human level judgments. You still don't want to have um, a you still want to have your doctor make your diagnosis and treatment decisions rather than AI do it. Can AI do it in 10 years from now? Who knows? But today's state of the art, there is still some hallucination is a potential problem. Many AI models are overconfident, and can lead you down a path that is not productive. So, keeping human in the loop, having a deep understanding of the workflows, and particularly surfacing knowledge that allows human beings to make judgments, particularly when workflows exceptions arise. Workflows are systematic and no exception arises, AI is going to be able to do a very good job. Like, for example, you tell an AI agent, book me a flight from San Francisco to Miami on next Tuesday, and my preferred airlines are American and Delta. Uh, the agent can possibly do that kind of a job because it's a very well specified job, and a travel agent who used to do that job, now a AI travel agent can do that job. But that is contrasting that with reading an MRI for a patient and making a judgment call about whether there is cancer present or not present, is not something that I would trust an AI to do today.
Oh, fantastic, Prem. In fact, at the India AI Summit, I was one of the speakers. I was talking about AI in productivity, and briefly, one thing we touched upon. In fact, in most of my courses, we touch upon is risk and ethics of AI, which is becoming more and more prominent because some of these things are still there, and a lot of challenges are there. And I think you have partially already answered it, but there is one participant, Ramakrishnan. He's asking that, of course, Turing test has been passed, and now that AGI is the threshold, and long before we see its impact in IVR, we may be already there. So, what are your thoughts on this, particularly specifically on AGI, or the impact that the exponential impact that's building in this particular space? Yeah.
So AGI, there is some controversy at the frontier on whether the current generative AI models, which fundamentally rely on very large data sets that already exist in the world out there, which have been largely produced by human beings, right, over the last hundreds of years. The large language models are able to leverage all that information and extract useful insights out of that information and provide answers to questions that humans have. We are doing a very good job of that, and that is kind of like where Turing test was really geared towards. But to get to AGI, there are people who have doubled down on large language models, believe that there is a meta knowledge that is accumulating out of the concrete knowledge that the agentic AI is being trained on, and that is sufficient to get to AGI. So that's one school of thought. And this school of thought, obviously people who have sunk billions and billions of dollars into that, like OpenAI and Gemini and so on, believe that. But there are voices, very well informed scientists as well as frontier technology people, who believe that AGI is only possible with a different model, more of a reinforcement learning kind of a model, where the model learns as it goes along. It does not rely on huge data sets, but it encounters the real world from day one and continuously interacts with the real world, learns from that real world, modifies its own internals, and then re-engages with the real world. And so that is the avenue that many are now pursuing. I am not expert enough to say which is going to succeed, because I would say personally, if you were to push me, the second way seems to me is the way of AGI, because the current LLMs very much have a two-phase execution model, which is there is a training model, training time, and then there is a running time. That is not the way we work. We are constantly training and constantly running, right? From infancy. As someone said, a baby, doesn't have access to any huge repository of data on which to train. The baby just takes small steps, crawls first, takes small steps, hangs onto a sofa, gets up. It learns from the environment, and in so doing, it learns physics, it learns psychology, it learns many of the things that we take for granted as part of AGI. So my personal opinion is that is a more productive path, but LLMs have proven with additional reinforcement learning and human-based reinforcement learning and so on to be a lot more than one had hoped. And if you believe the hype of mythos from Anthropic, it seems to be doing many more things than people thought was possible, right? So this is a wait and watch
Yeah.
part.
Okay, great. Rishi.
So founders have always made a lot of mistakes, and even though their technology is strong, market is strong, many of their own mistakes will kill the startups. How do you see this evolving in the AI space? What are the common mistakes founders are making?
I I don't think I have seen enough sampling to kind of say where people are failing yet. I mean, like any kind of a pattern for failure. But many people, one way to fail, I will say very clearly, is to try to market a platform. There is a tendency on the part of particularly technologically capable entrepreneurs to create platforms before thinking about solutions. So I have a favorite maxim: uh, build platforms, market products, sell solutions. Ultimately, customers never buy platforms. Customers buy solutions to the problems that they have, right? But as technologists and architects, we should definitely create platforms in terms of building so that they are flexible, they anticipate future adaptations, and all that. Those first principles, yes, architect the platform, build a platform, but that's not what you go to market with. You go to market with solutions that customers want to buy. And the in between the solution and the platform is the product. Product is nothing but a set of capabilities that the platform can do, customized to a use case that many customers have. That's my definition of a product. And so the genius of an entrepreneur is to conceive a urgent unmet market need and come up with a value proposition on which they build a platform, but conceive a bunch of use cases that are scalable and package a set of capabilities built on top of the platform that address that use case, and then go to market with that use case and scale it efficiently across users who share the same use case. And kind of like a simple way of thinking about it. If you do those things, again, these are necessary conditions, not sufficient. At least you won't make rookie mistakes if you do this.
Great. There is a question from Devdutt Shah, a good friend from Toronto, also an ITB alumni. And his question is very specific. And he's asking, how do you see brain implanted chips interfacing with AI agents? Is this already happening? That is his first question. And then follow up, of course, and part of that is, will this complement or reduce the role of text and voice interface? Or will this be a somewhat trivial technology evolution?
This is a very specific question. I do not claim to be an expert in neural technology. There is, of course, Elon Musk's Neuralink, the most probably well-known experimentation of implantation of chips directly interacting with the central nervous system. And like with every technological promise, there is a huge potential benefit and a huge potential downside, right? Um, when you start having silicon integrated with central nervous system, it calls into question of being a human. Where does the human start, and where does the robot, end? Uh, so my own thing is that we are of course used to having enhanced technological enhancements implanted. Without pacemakers, many people will be dead, right? So I'm clearly not a Luddite in terms of saying that having implantations is not good. Prosthetic, limbs help a lot of people, and all of that is good. But it's the downside is also unknown and unpredictable at this time. So I will not claim any huge insight other than caution.
Okay. My guess is that probably he is either on the board of one of those startups or planning to invest or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be a possibility. Yeah, or a random question came out of reading and writing. Yeah. But anyways, Hirshi, are you there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
we have
my
time for two questions. Maybe you can take one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a question from Kamlesh. He says, today AI across the world is looked up as panacea for all problems that exist. And even big companies are brainwashing users to believe that. And I'm sure there's a lot of news that big companies are laying off. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think it is a real problem with respect to AI. In my spare time, I do follow a lot of podcasts and articles um, about the impact of AI on the economy in general going forward. And I try to understand from both the boosters, the promoters of the technology, who are painting a utopia that we have never seen before of material abundance because of AI. And I have also follow people who are very afraid of the world that we are entering. In simple terms, from an economic perspective, if AI in some form, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, is capable of doing most of the work human beings currently do as a replacement, not as an enhancement, what do human beings do? That means in the capitalist system, if the labor is absent, then that means income is absent for most households. If income is absent for most households, they cannot afford to buy anything. And if they cannot buy anything, what is the AI producing for? So it's a very, difficult question to answer. Many people are looking at this as a, depending upon their own biases and their own interest. But I think this is a real problem. And I ask most people when I meet them about AI, if labor becomes zero, what is the world going to look like? Is it universal basic income? Is it, do we all get sovereign wealth funds in which we participate as capitalists? Many scenarios are possible, but I'm not an economist, so I won't make predictions.
I
I'm
think
just
that's where
learning.
philosophy your philosophy degree is coming to picture, where you're talking more of the philosophical question towards the end. But
Yes.
by the way, it's time to end. Just one final question again from Rajnar, very active ITBA alumni. His of course he's asking about word model development. Where we stand on word model development, and what are your thoughts about this, and maybe also the future of agentic AI or AI in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I briefly alluded to that. World model is in the second category of AGI development, where the fundamental assumption or the thesis is agentic or AI has to have a world model from the beginning, and that world model like a in-between state from between data sets from which the agent or the AI is experiencing the real world. And it is beginning to show itself in video games as one of the interesting ways, creating these world models that you can interact with. Um, I think soon, to some degree, we don't know, and clearly in the art of war, I believe drones and things of that nature are beginning to have a world models, but you don't hear as much about it because of the nature of that business. But I do believe that world models is a very productive frontier research right now, and it could lead to a AGI more so than LLMs. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Prem, for your time and for a fantastic talk. I already see that everyone already enjoyed it. And of course, the recording and everything will be available for others to see. Just one question is, usually after the talks, people would like to connect to you. Is it good to share your LinkedIn profile in case they would like to connect to you?
Yeah.
It's all right, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely, Vaibhav. I always accept invitations on LinkedIn from IIT Bombay alum. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, any final words, Rajan, from your end?
No, thank you. It was very illuminating. Everything I think went to this. We didn't have time to take all the questions that were fielded by, I see some of my classmates. They are also on the in the audience, especially Prashant. I saw him raising his hand, and I
We'll
guess
try
he
inviting them
wanted.
as the speakers directly, and then we'll take up more
Yeah,
questions.
he's
Yeah,
slated to be one of the speakers for in the near future. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
He was.
yeah.
He would have asked some pointed questions to Prem, I'm sure. He's kind of in that vein. So we'll
Okay,
leave it at that. Thanks, Prem, and
okay.
thanks
Yeah,
everybody. Yeah.
Hey, thank you,
Thanks.
guys. Thanks for this. Enjoyed it. And thank you very much for putting it together.
yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Prem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rajan.